Will Spanish become America's official language under Kamala Harris's presidency? According to Pew Research Center, in 2022, there were 63.7 million Hispanics living in the United States who have diverse origins in Latin America and elsewhere. And with more than 37 million population, Mexicans top the list. This massive number of Hispanic population frightens white Americans who aspire to preserve their dominance in all aspects of political, social, and economic life in America. English versus Spanish. The United States does not have an official language. English is the most widely used language in the United States, and some states have designated it as their official language. However, the United States does not have an official language at the federal level. The Founding Fathers didn't want to offend Americans who helped fight for independence, and they didn't think it was necessary to declare an official language because English was already the dominant language. Nonetheless, the United States has always been a diverse nation, people speaking many languages since the beginning of its history. The original 13 colonies were colonized by the British, French, Germans, Spaniards, and there were already indigenous peoples in North America. Despite this, there has always been a temptation to make English America's official and national language. Several bills have been introduced in Congress to designate English as the national language, but none have passed into law. English is still the most commonly used language in the country, and some states have designated it as their official language. However, there is a looming threat to the dominance of English language in America: Spanish. The Spanish-speaking population has been growing especially since 1980s. The Hispanic population growth does not necessarily mean that the status of English as the most dominant language has changed. Quite contrary, the share of English as a spoken language has been growing among Latino populations. Based on Pew Research Center statistics, the share of Hispanics in the U.S. who speak English proficiently has increased. In 2021, 72% of U.S. Hispanics ages 5 and older either spoke only English at home or spoke English very well, up from 65% in 2010. During that time, both U.S.-born and immigrant Hispanics became more proficient in the language. The share of U.S.-born Hispanics who were proficient grew from 88% to 91%, and the share among immigrant Hispanics grew from 32% to 38%. However, the rapid growth among Hispanic population in America has the potential to change this. Many white Americans try to contain Hispanic population by supporting anti-black, anti-brown, and anti-immigration politicians such as Donald Trump. Yet, immigration is not the main source of growth in America's brown and Hispanic population. Immigration plays a key role in U.S. Hispanic population increase. However, the source of population growth is not limited to immigration. Immigrants are a declining share of the U.S. Hispanic population. About 1/3, 32% of all U.S. Hispanics were immigrants in 2021, down from 37% in 2010. U.S. births to Hispanic parents outpaced the arrival of new immigrants in that span. As a result, the U.S.-born Hispanic population grew by 10.7 million, while the immigrant population grew by 1.1 million. The brown population growth has been the single most concerning development for Republican Party voters and white Americans. Put simply, most brown people vote Democratic and see Republican Party as white people's party. Many white Americans are concerned about citizenship prospects for brown people. The vast majority of U.S. Hispanics are U.S. citizens. About 81% of Hispanics living in the country in 2021 were U.S. citizens, up from 74% in 2010. U.S. citizens include people born in the U.S. and its territory, people born abroad to American parents, and immigrants who have become U.S. citizens through naturalization, and the vast majority of them vote Democratic. White versus brown. In response to new waves of immigration from mostly non-white, non-European, brown, Hispanic, and third world countries, conservative white American political scientist Samuel P. Huntington put forward the theory of the clash of civilizations. The clash of civilization is a thesis that states that people's cultural and religious identities will be the primary source of conflict in the post-Cold War world. Huntington argues that future wars would be fought not between countries but between cultures. It was proposed in a 1992 lecture at the neocon think tank American Enterprise Institute. Huntington later expanded his thesis in a 1996 book, The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order. Huntington believed that while the age of ideology has ended, the world had only reverted to a normal state of affairs characterized by cultural conflict. In his thesis, he argued that the primary axis of conflict in the future will be along cultural lines. As an extension, he posits that the concept of different civilizations as the highest category of cultural identity will become increasingly useful in analyzing the potential for conflict. In addition, the clash of civilizations for Huntington represents a development of history. In the past, world history was mainly about the struggles between monarchs, nations, and ideologies, such as that seen within Western civilization. However, after the end of the Cold War, world politics moved into a new phase in which non-Western civilizations, in the US case predominantly the Hispanic culture, are no longer the exploited recipients of Western civilization, but have become additional important actors joining the West to shape and move world history. Samuel Huntington has become wary of future white America's identity crisis problem in the face of the fast growth of brown and Hispanic population of the United States. So much so that he wrote another book in the year 2004 called Who Are We? The Challenges to America's National Identity. The book attempts to understand the nature of white American identity and the challenges it will face from brown cultures in the future. Statements by some senior Democratic Party officials, including by potentially next U.S. President Kamala Harris and Senator Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, frightens many white Americans. Schumer recently claimed that the solution to America's declining birth rate was to grant a path to citizenship for 11 million illegal immigrants that are currently in the country.
Because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are.
Mass migration of brown people to America and their higher birth rates have long rung the alarm bell for white Americans. Recent calls for mass amnesty and path to citizenship of undocumented immigrants by senior Democratic Party leaders was the last wake-up call for neo-Nazi and racist groups. According to white supremacist groups, by expressing willingness to grant citizenship to brown undocumented population in America, Chuck Schumer has embraced Great Replacement theory. The Great Replacement theory is a racist, white nationalist, far-right conspiracy theory which states that with the complicity or cooperation of replacist elites, the ethnic white populations at large in the West are being demographically and culturally replaced by inferior brown and other non-white peoples. through mass migration, demographic growth, and a drop in the birth rate of white Europeans and their descendants in America and elsewhere.
Every American has the opportunity to own a home, start a business, and build wealth, including intergenerational wealth.
Would Kamala's presidency lead to a white-brown civil war in America? Most recent polls indicate that Kamala Harris is ahead of Donald Trump, and if the current trend holds, Kamala Harris will ascend to power as next U.S. president. Kamala Harris is called border czar by her opponents, but she has a soft spot for unconditionally and limitlessly embracing non-white population. Kamala Harris would unleash the greatest population and demographic engineering project in America's history. Her tacit and unstated goal and strategic objective is to transform America into a white minority or majority minority country in the span of less than a decade, provided that she can secure 2 presidential terms. Most white Americans believe that if Kamala Harris takes control of the White House, some 10 to 15 million of brown undocumented immigrants move to America, mostly from Latin American countries, increasing the size of America's undocumented population to 30 to 40 million. When added to the U.S. citizens of Hispanic descent, they are going to make up the single largest ethnic majority group in America. It is expected that with the surge in Latino population, the urge to learn English would drop significantly, and Hispanics would demand Spanish to become official national language of the United States of America.
You have criticized Governor Bush for speaking Spanish on the campaign trail. You said, quote, he should really set an example by speaking English in the United States. What's wrong with speaking Spanish?
Well, I think it's wonderful and all, but I did it a little bit half-heartedly, but I do mean it to a large extent. We have a country where to assimilate, you have to speak English.
The majority of Americans then would reject potential demands by Hispanic population to elevate Spanish as the official language. This friction could potentially become a very explosive and controversial matter. The linguistic divide, English versus Spanish, and the cultural divide, Western versus Hispanic, and the racial divide, white versus brown, would have the potential to fuel racial tensions and spark a civil war in America, a dystopian future that people like Samuel Huntington have already prognosed and warned about. I hope you found this analysis insightful. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. See you in the next video.